1772, and things are beginning to seem relatively calm in Europe. Russia has been able to save itself from total collapse from within. Spain became the hegemon in Western and Central Europe. Sweden was no longer a threat in Finland, and Britain had removed itself from continental affairs. However, observers from all over Europe agreed that with a resurgent France and a no longer existing Holy Roman Empire, Western and Central Europe will see many significant changes. Within Russia itself, the Empress Catherine has been aging, leaving many to question as to what her son, Paul, will be like as Tsar, as for some, he resembled the last male Tsar a bit too much personality-wise. In South America, the former Spanish colonies have completely collapsed, with the nativists solidifying their control in southern Peru, while the Republicans continued clinging on to territory in the north. In Central Asia, a new regional power has risen, the Caliphate of Jaisalmer, replacing the Mughals, and pushing the Qajar dynasty far out west, causing them to become no more than a mere vassal of the Ottomans, with the British ruling in the southern half of the Indian subcontinent. The atmosphere of the border regions between the Ottomans and the Russian-controlled Caucasus was very tense, with soldiers stationed on both sides, anticipating war to break out at any moment. Russian authorities were also worried about the Turkish Sultan using his position of the Caliph to incite revolt of the many Muslims living as subjects of the Russian crown. To try prevent this from happening, the idea of Russification was created, with Crimea being center stage of this program. Same thing in the Baltic states. The Empress was wary that Sweden could incite the local nobility to revolt yet again. Meanwhile, in North America, after the Mahocan-Quebec War, the Kingdom of Quebec, ruled over by the Royal House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, established the Martinique Protectorate. However, unhappy with now being the subjects of a Franco-German ruling class, the people there rebelled, be it the descendants of English colonists or the natives, leading to the total collapse of Martinique. On the diplomatic front, the Russian Empire had begun expressing interest in what became known as the Great German Game, supporting the Prussian claims for supremacy in the German-speaking world as opposed to the Holy League. Another reason for this involvement was to have an ally in case of a future war with Poland, as Russian leadership was getting worried about the cordial relationship developing between the Polish kings and the Turkish Sultan. Meanwhile, the remainder of Qajar rule in Persia has collapsed too. Russian diplomats were sent to offer protection to the newly founded states if the Ottomans ever decided to attack them, but the response was always a refusal. In 1778, war broke out between Prussia and the Holy League, still commonly called the Holy Roman Empire by some. Instantly, the moment these news reached the imperial court, Catherine ordered money be sent to the Prussians to help fight the war that many have been expecting to decide the future of the German states. A strong friendship sparked between the Prussian King Frederick and the Russian Empress. In the meantime, the Russification program was ongoing in the lands of the former Khanate. The locals were not happy about being forced to speak Russian and adhere to Russian custom. This dissatisfaction sometimes even escalated to violence. By 1779, France had managed to once again become a prominent player in Western Europe, managing to entice the Netherlands into their sphere of influence. The French kings too have expressed interest in the Great German Game. and the German war currently ongoing. But unlike the Russians, the French did not want to see a unitarian German state, instead supporting the Holy League. For a few years now, there was no more state of Maroc, as the descendants of English colonists had become extremely upset with the Moroccan government for losing a war to Quebec, leaving Maroc with only half its former size. They did not waste any time overthrowing the Moroccan state, instead proclaiming the white nativist Republic of Michigan, announcing their claim for the return of former Moroccan lands into the bosom of Michigan. Meanwhile, in the German war, intense battles were being waged around the town of Leipzig, with the city going back and forth between being controlled by Prussia, then by the League, then Prussia again. It was strange for many in those days to notice that Spain seemingly had no interest in the German war. In Mongolian governorates, a major Mongol revolt sparked. There was no doubt that this was because of the policy of Russification being implemented extremely brutally in these regions. This revolt will only be put down in 1782, due to the style of warfare the Mongol rebels used. Despite that, they lost every engagement against the imperial army. Another rebellion will spark in 1781 in the swamps of Finland, but they were no match for the army. However, this time, Catherine's wariness over Swedish meddling will grow into paranoia, as another rebellion in Finland happened later that same year. It was in 1782 that the world learned why the Spanish Empire had no interest in the German war. They were having trouble keeping control over their Austrian conquests, but their efforts of consolidation have failed, as the exiled Habsburgs were able to incite a massive revolt in the province of Bohemia against Spanish overlordship. A year later, news broke out about the end of the German war, resulting in the collapse of the Holy League's armed forces, leaving Prussia in a prime position to unify the German states. King Frederick himself was now known as the Great for his victory at Leipzig, as that victory resulted in Prussia becoming the dominant German state. This was a major setback for France, but not an end to their rivalry with Prussia. It also turned out that Denmark also had interests in Germany, as news came out that they accepted becoming the protector of what remained of the Holy League. However, Russian leadership had no time to celebrate, as another revolt in Mongolia had occurred. This led to Catherine changing Russia's priorities in government spending. If before these revolts under her reign, the government would spend 30% of its budget on science, it was now reduced to just 10%, in fear that its investments in education within the empire that lead to the locals to get ideas of revolt. Because surely it couldn't possibly be the fact of foreign rule that led them to that idea at all. In October of 1783, Catherine's paranoia over Sweden had gotten the better of her, declaring war on Sweden. It was decided that the Russian army shall land directly in Stockholm, capture the Swedish king, and force him to sign a treaty, swearing that Sweden shall never again interfere in Russia's internal affairs. However, the landing force was utterly massacred on the beaches of Stockholm. Battles raged in the frozen wastes of the north, near the Swedish and Russian border, but those took on the character of minor skirmishes if anything. In 1784, a revolt happened at Tsaritsyn. It was a peasant revolt, led by a former soldier Emilian Pugachev, who deserted the Russian army when he learned that he will be sent to the northern wastes to fight the Swedes. He tried to get the surrounding provinces to join him in his rebellion, but there turned out to be far more loyal soldiers to the Empress than he anticipated. His army of peasants and unhappy soldiers was easily crushed, but Emilian himself managed to get away, forced into hiding. In June of 1784, Russian spies have learned of a major Arab revolt in the lands of the Ottoman Empire. This distraction guaranteed that the Turks will not try to attack Russia while it's at war with Sweden. In autumn of the same year, the Russian army had arrived in greater numbers, pushing the Swedish army back across the border. Suddenly, Emilian Pugachev resurfaced, this time on the coastal settlements of the Caspian Sea, managing to establish himself in Astrakhan. However, he did not have any luck fighting the Imperial army this time either, eventually being captured and brought to Moscow for his execution in October.